In tonight's episode, we're heading back to the mist-covered hills of Tai Po, Hong Kong, a quiet neighborhood where something terrifying unfolded in the winter of 1989. The story centers around a tiny tea house, a late-night food delivery, and an apartment building with a reputation no one wanted to speak about after dark. Hei Hau Fai Gardens wasn't known for much until one December night when a steaming banquet for 4 was delivered to a room no one should have been in. The door creaked open just wide enough for a pale hand to emerge and pay in full. But what looked like money turned into something else entirely, something the living don't use. What started as a simple takeout order would soon unravel into one of Hong Kong's most chilling urban legends. Let's dive in. It all began in the final days of 1989. Hong Kong was cloaked in winter drizzle, its skies a dull, heavy grey. Most people were rushing to wrap up the year, shopping, eating, and escaping the cold in their favorite cha-chan tangs. One of them sat quietly tucked away in Tai Po, a modest tea house called Chow Chung Ki. Steam rolled out from its kitchen, like breath from a sleeping dragon, and regulars filled its small wooden tables with bowls of char siu rice and beef ho fun. That night, a strange phone call came in just before closing. The voice on the other end was barely audible, distant, and crackling like it came from beneath water. But the order was clear. Dishes for 4, not unusual, except for the sheer amount of food requested, a full banquet of the most expensive items on the menu. No one thought much of it until they heard the address. Hei Hau Fai Gardens. The name alone made the staff uneasy. The building had a reputation. Tenants came and went quickly. Strange noises were reported in the halls. Elevators stopped on floors no one called. But a job was a job. The youngest on staff, a teenage delivery boy named Cheng, took the order without protest. He bundled the food, hopped on his scooter, and rode into the rain. He didn't know it yet, but this would be the last normal delivery of his life. Because what waited at Hei Hau Fai Gardens was not human. The road to Hei Hau Fai Gardens was quiet. Too quiet. Cheng expected at least a few lights in the windows or the flicker of televisions behind curtains. But when he arrived, the building loomed in near total darkness. Only the weak, yellow glow of a single hallway bulb buzzed above the entrance, casting long, jittery shadows across the wet pavement. No concierge, no security, not even the hum of a nearby apartment fan, just silence. He stepped inside with the food still warm in its plastic bags. The lobby smelled faintly of mildew and something else, something stale, like incense long burned out. The elevator stood dead in its tracks. No buttons lit up. So Cheng took the stairs, each step echoing louder than the last. When he reached the 5th floor, the hallway stretched out before him, dim and lifeless. The apartment door, number 512, was barely ajar, as if waiting. He hesitated, but then gently knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Just as he turned to leave, the door creaked open a few inches more. A pale hand reached out, slow and deliberate, its skin a sickly grey. No face appeared, no voice. The hand dropped exact change into his hand and withdrew without a word. As the door clicked shut behind it, Cheng stood frozen. He couldn't explain why, but a cold pressure began to build behind his eyes. Something in that hallway felt wrong. He hurried back down the stairs, heart pounding faster with every step. Back at the restaurant, he handed over the cash, still damp and sticky, and said nothing. But when the owner looked closer, the colour drained from his face. The bills weren't real. They were joss paper. Hell money. Burned as offerings for the dead. The next night, the phone rang again. Same low, muffled voice. Same exact order, 4 dishes, all top-shelf items. The staff exchanged uneasy glances, hoping it was just a prank. But the money they'd received the night before, those crumpled sheets of ghostly joss paper, still sat in the office drawer, untouched, as if radiating cold from within. Cheng refused to go this time. He didn't say why. He just muttered an excuse and walked out the back door, pale and trembling. So the owner, Mr. Lau, made the delivery himself. A tough man in his 60s who had seen more than his share of strange customers, Mr. Lau believed there had to be a rational explanation. Maybe some disrespectful teens were playing a trick. Maybe the building had squatters. But even he couldn't ignore the chill that clung to the paper bills, or the fact that they had transformed after the delivery. When Cheng first received the money, they looked like ordinary Hong Kong notes. Only later did the ghost markings appear. This time, Lau took a flashlight, a second staff member named Siwa, and a box of joss sticks, just in case. Hei Hau Fai Gardens looked no better the second night. It was just as silent, just as dark. The elevator was still dead. On the 5th floor, the same door stood ajar. Again, no one answered their knocks. But as they turned to leave, the door creaked open, and again, the same pale hand extended. Lau pushed forward, but Siwa yanked him back. "No," she whispered. "Did you feel that?" The temperature around the door had dropped suddenly, unnaturally. Her breath fogged the air. They left in silence, and this time, Lau kept the money in a sealed envelope. But by the next morning, the same thing happened. The cash had turned into joss paper, and now it reeked faintly of burnt incense. Later that day, a regular customer overheard Lau talking about the building and froze. "You delivered to that place?" she asked. "Didn't you hear? A group of boys died there. Mahjong night. They lit a charcoal burner and never woke up." Lau stared at her. "When?" "A week ago. Gas poisoning. I think they were on the 5th floor." That night, the call came again. Same order, same voice. But this time, Lau didn't deliver. He called the police. At first, they weren't interested. But once they heard the address and details about the cash turning into joss paper, an officer decided to follow up. When they forced open the door of apartment 512, the officers were hit with the stench of decay and something stranger, the unmistakable smell of freshly cooked food. Inside, 4 young men sat slumped around a mahjong table, dead for days. In their bloated stomachs, forensic teams found freshly consumed food, beef ho fun, char siu rice, just like the deliveries. And on the floor, near the door, were fingerprints, matching the deceased. The discovery sent shockwaves through Tai Po. 4 bodies, already in an advanced state of decay, yet somehow their stomachs were full of food no one could explain. The receipts from Chow Chung Ki matched perfectly. Same dishes, same portions, same timestamps. But the orders had been placed after the estimated time of death. And then came the fingerprints, all over the hell money, on the door handle, even on the plastic takeout bags. Every single one belonged to the deceased. Mr. Lau sat in his tea house the next morning, staring at the sealed security envelope he'd kept the night before. He hadn't opened it yet. He wasn't sure he wanted to. But when he finally tore the flap and peered inside, his heart stopped. More hell notes, crisp, neatly folded, fresh from the spirit world. The restaurant filled with incense that afternoon, not from a customer, but from Siwa. She moved through the kitchen, waving coils of smoke into corners, muttering short Cantonese prayers under her breath. "They don't know they're dead," she said quietly. "They're still playing mahjong, still hungry." Cheng, who hadn't spoken much since that first night, finally said it out loud. "They're stuck." That evening, the restaurant phone rang one last time. Lau didn't answer. But the ringing didn't stop. It echoed through the tea house long after they unplugged the line. The sound seemed to seep into the walls, through the windows, down into the tiles. A call that wasn't meant for the living, but for those still sitting at a table on the 5th floor, waiting for their next meal. The police never found a living soul behind the orders. No signs of forced entry, no tampering with phone lines, no evidence of outside involvement. Just 4 young men who had died quietly during a friendly game of mahjong and somehow continued to live out their final routine long after their bodies had gone cold. A local Taoist priest was brought in. Not by the authorities, but by Lao himself. The priest walked the halls of Hei Hau Fai Gardens with a bundle of incense and a bell that never stopped ringing. He stopped at apartment 512, peered inside the threshold, and didn't cross. "They don't know," he said. "Their spirits are trapped in repetition. They died, suddenly. The door between here and there was never closed." When asked if the deliveries helped them move on, the priest shook his head. "No, it feeds the loop. Every meal, every order, they're clinging to the living world, stuck between hunger and habit." Siwa stopped coming to work after that. Cheng left the city entirely. Mr. Lau never answered another late-night call again. The restaurant still stands, but the old landline phone was ripped out and burned in a quiet ceremony behind the building. And Hei Hau Fai Gardens? People still report hearing the click of mahjong tiles late at night, even when the unit is empty. The story faded from headlines within weeks. No arrests, no follow-up, just a cold case wrapped in whispers and ghost money. The official report listed accidental death by carbon monoxide poisoning. Nothing more. But the regulars at Chow Chung Kee still talk, quietly, when the sun goes down and the rain starts to fall. Some say the calls still come through, even without a phone line. A low crackling voice asking for beef ho fun and char siu rice, 4 sets of chopsticks, 4 bowls. One former tenant of Hei Hau Fai Gardens claims she saw it through the peephole one stormy night. 4 men sitting perfectly still around a mahjong table, heads bowed, steam rising from invisible bowls. Then, without warning, they all turned toward the door. That apartment remains locked now, bolted from the outside. No one will live there. No one dares. And yet, every so often, a food delivery bag shows up outside the door. Still warm. Still sealed. No one ever sees who drops it off, or who opens the door to take it in. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video and want to listen to more true horror stories from Asia, feel free to subscribe and put on your notifications. I upload at least 3 times a week. Wish you all the best.